Hey, beautiful soul. You're listening to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast, your weekly dose of fertility wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach. This is your go-to podcast for all things to naturally nourish your fertility, embody womb healing, and reclaim your feminine power to accelerate your path to pregnancy. My expert guests and I will be having intentional conversations to discuss the many facets of a thriving, fertile foundation, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as women on our journey to motherhood. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. In this episode, I'll be talking with Sandhya Gokal, a pharmacist and healthy eating coach dedicated to making healthy eating fun and easeful. Today, we'll be diving into how nutrition can play a role in your recovery after experiencing a miscarriage. So welcome, Sandhya. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today, and I'd love to dive right in. How did nutrition play a role in your journey to motherhood?
Thank you so much for having me, Katie. So nutrition played a big role. First of all, when I started trying to get pregnant, I had just come off the pill and I knew that I wanted to get my body in shape for becoming pregnant. And so I started off with my healthy eating journey, which I already had the habits in place, which was really great. And then COVID hit. And so we were stuck in this place where resources were a little bit limited and it was very hard to get things at the time. And I think all of us let ourselves go a little bit in COVID. We were stuck inside and we just wanted to eat whatever we could. And then, so it took me about, I started trying to get pregnant in 2021, January. And in August 2021, I got pregnant, but I unfortunately experienced a miscarriage. And through my recovery process, it took about 6 to 8 months to get pregnant again. And that whole period was really a recovery period. And through that time, I really focused on what I was eating and taking care of my body, because I really wanted to make sure that when I did get pregnant again, with hopefully what was a viable pregnancy, I wanted really to make sure that my body was in a place where it was fully healed and I was giving it the best chance I could to have a pregnancy where it was capable of looking after myself throughout the pregnancy as well.
Beautiful. So what were some specific nutrition changes that you made?
In 2019, I actually quit sugar. And I actually was diagnosed with prediabetes. And because of that, I wanted to make that change dietary wise, even though I'm a pharmacist. I knew there's medications that you can take. I really wanted to try doing it without medication. So I did like 360 on my eating habits, and I really made those changes in my mindset and actually in my environment as well. And so a lot of those changes got, again, derailed during that lockdown period in Sydney. And so what I actually did was I just reverted back to a lot of things that were very natural to me, which was trying to avoid processed sugars, eating a lot more of the whole foods, fruits and vegetables, including a lot of like natural sources of proteins, meat and eggs and fish, those kind of things. And those changes themselves, as a pharmacist, I know that like eating those kind of foods, I guess everyone knows like those foods are really going to nourish your body. But for me, it was really important to just create a really healing environment. And a lot of those foods have healing properties in terms of they give your cells a really great energy source. They give your cells what's needed for repair, like magnesium and vitamin D. And so that's really what I was focusing on, getting all of the nutrients that I could get from my food, just to create that healing environment so that as I was recovering in a physical sense, I was also giving my body things to recover in a mental, on like on the mental side of things as well, which was really important.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you brought up you were pre-diabetic. I can't think of the statistics off the top of my head, but it's pretty high in terms of how many people are pre-diabetic or on that line, and they have no idea. And in terms of when you're wanting to conceive, the regulation of your blood sugar is extremely important. It can have either a negative or a positive downstream effect on our reproductive hormones and so many other things, our thyroid. And yeah, I think that it's amazing that you had that information, you took it into your own hands. I always think that everyone should really take a dietary approach first before using medications. And we're both pharmacists, but that doesn't mean that medication should be our first line of therapy, depending on what we're trying to treat or heal. So I love that you did that for yourself. And yeah, obviously COVID, that was a lot of stress and then just being inside and all of those things. So I'm glad to hear that you got back on the horse, so to say, even though we had that little derailment. But so I know in yours and my previous conversations, I remember you mentioning you wanted to be the type of mother that you envisioned, right? So that is kind of one of the places that you worked on in that 6 to 8 month period between your miscarriage and then conceiving your second child. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always knew that before I got pregnant, I really wanted to work on myself and make sure that I was on that road to becoming the person I wanted to be as a mother. And so those 6 to 8 months, I put myself in the mindset of I'm definitely going to be a mother at some point in the future. So this is a really great opportunity for me to work on those elements that maybe I haven't gotten down yet, putting myself in a really nurturing place, which was actually really easy because as a community pharmacist and as a health coach, I was working with people. And so I was able to actually really practice those nurturing elements that I wanted to include, but also working on creating like a nutritional environment that I knew that if I had a baby, I wanted to demonstrate and model those behaviors for my child. And that is actually something I do now as a mother as well, which it's one of those elements where I'm really happy with how I am as a mother. You always have the things you're like, oh, I could do this better. But the way I eat and I demonstrate and model for my child what good nutrition looks like and what can really benefit you in terms of healing or even just on a day-to-day basis, what looks like I guess, varied diet, but not anything restrictive. So those kind of things I'm really happy that I worked on in that period because it really just made such a difference when I actually got the opportunity to be a mother.
I love that so much for a lot of different reasons. So, one, your mindset, the fact that you're like, I am going to be a mother someday, no question, no doubt about it. I think that that piece is so important because I believe that if it's on your heart, that means it is meant for you. And our mindset can honestly, it can make us or break us sometimes. So I think that that was a really beautiful shift that you made. And then the fact that you realize if I'm going to be a mom anyways, at some point in my life, I might as well start on these changes now. And I think that that is the perfect time to do it because I can tell you right now, when you're pregnant and if you are nauseous or whatever it may be, you're going to want those nutrient stores. You're going to want your body starting in a healthy place. Because I can tell you in my first trimester, I really had to resort to like pretzels and peanut butter and apples and peanut butter because that is what I was able to eat. And sometimes you can psych yourself out. Oh my gosh, I'm not eating good enough, but it's literally all you can do. So one, you want to build those nutrient stores. Two, also setting your body up for birth because we lose so many nutrients and minerals throughout pregnancy and birth, right? We're giving that all to baby. And then in postpartum, if you don't have those healthy habits stacked upon each other, when you're tired, you're exhausted, you're caring for another human being, it can be really hard. So I think having those habits solidified and as your foundation is so important. And then, of course, the babies, they grow so quickly. And now I know your little one, I think is 18 months old. You're modeling right? What good nutrition looks like right now. And by doing that, you are ideally saving your child from so many different conditions that can come up with poor eating habits. So I love that you were able to transition and shift in that time period, which it can be so hard, right? Experiencing a miscarriage, there are so many things that can come up physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, where you probably, I'm sure there are days where it's like, oh, I might as well just give up, right? What's the point? And you didn't, and you were able to shift that and help others fuel their bodies as well. So I love that part of your story.
Thank you. I'd like to actually, to your point of what you focus on, that's so important. And I know in like the midst of a miscarriage, it can be so hard. Like you're going through something that's really quite traumatic and it's distressing. You basically lost something that you were really attached to, and you were really, for most people, it's something very precious. And what you focus on is so important in that time, but it can also be really difficult to focus on something that seems like it's going to make a benefit, because at that moment you just feel like, what's the point? But taking it really slow and just taking it one step at a time and just doing the tiniest thing you can do is really important in that time, because it not only, what we were talking about today, builds the foundation of creating good nutrition and stuff, but it also sets up what you're going to be like in the future. So if you can focus on just adding one extra vegetable, something really, really small, even if it's not nutritional, even if it's just doing a 5 minutes meditation practice, because you know that that's going to give you a better state of mind to face the day and in a really almost depressing time, that can make such a difference going forward. So that, I just wanted to add that in there. What you focus on can be the difference between handling something really well and just feeling like it's never, like the light is never going to come up at the end of the tunnel.
Great tip, because yeah, I can only imagine. And then also just something to know is, depending on how far along you were in the pregnancy, you may need to give yourself a little bit longer. I know that kind of later term miscarriages, your body has already really used up some of your nutrient and your mineral stores. So you may want to give your body a little bit longer to really heal and regain some of those nutrients as well. But it's a bond. No matter how early along it is a bond, energetically, physically, like on all the different levels. So like you said, give yourself grace, even if it's just one little change, they can always build. And even just to your point, meditating for a few minutes a day, doing that is going to ground your nervous system. And once you're able to get into a more centered state, that's going to trickle in your other places of life, in your nutrition, in your physical movement, because you're going to eventually start feeling a little bit better, more like yourself. And then you're going to be like, hey, you know what? I think I want to start adding more vegetables, or I think I'm going to ditch the soda or the juice or the sweet treats, because it's just not serving me anymore in this season that I am progressing to, that I'm evolving to. As a health coach and a pharmacist, what would you say would be your top 3 nutritional tips or changes that you would give to anyone maybe wanting to try to conceive after a miscarriage, or just wanting to try to conceive in general? Using our 4-step restorative fertility framework, we will 1, reveal the physical and energetic root cause. 2, we will remove the barriers to you conceiving and carrying a pregnancy to term. 3, we will rebalance the physical and energetic body with bio-individual strategies. And 4, receive. You will nourish the mind, body, and spirit so you can receive baby. I have 3 one-on-one spots, and this is for the woman who is ready to claim her fertility back. She's ready to step back into her power. She is ready to do what it takes to finally get pregnant. If you want to learn more about this, find me on Instagram at @the_wellness_pharmacist. My Instagram is going to be in the show notes.
Okay, so the first one would be make sure your vitamin D levels are like on point. So vitamin D, it's not associated with a lower risk of miscarriage, but it's associated with a better recovery from miscarriage. So you actually want about 75 micrograms of vitamin D in your diet per day. And that's actually not too hard to get. So you can use obviously supplements, but if you wanted to look at like a food source, so you've got oily fish, you've got eggs, and you've got mushrooms. They're really, really great sources of vitamin D. In a mindset perspective, just keeping in mind that you want to get 80% of your diet into that nutritional range and into the place where you're actually nourishing your body. And I say 80% because a lot of people after a miscarriage kind of focus on being perfect, because there's this misconception that something I did caused the miscarriage. But realistically, about 50% of miscarriages are caused by chromosomal abnormalities, and that's not something we can control. So focusing on having 80% of your diet, which is really nourishing and really nutritional, and focuses on those green leafy vegetables, fruits, grains, and lean meats and proteins and dairy. And then that 20% where you have food that may not be like nutritionally as good for you, but also is part of that comfort food side of things. Because I really think that when you're going through grief, trying to restrict yourself to like being perfect about what you're eating can be really disheartening almost, because you're like, oh, I feel so sad, but I can't even eat the foods that make me feel really comfortable. And there is a big part of emotional eating in these kind of situations, because it's such a traumatic event. I really think that having that emotional eating episode is actually okay. It's okay to just eat comfort foods, normalize eating comfort foods, and that's what that 20% is for. And the third tip is actually what I said before, just start really, really small. Don't focus on changing everything, which can be really tempting when you go through trauma and you're like, I just want to be a different person. I don't want to be experiencing all these emotions. I don't want to be feeling so sad all the time. I just want to be a different person. But if you start small, you'll find that at the end of this journey, whether or not you get pregnant, whether or not you have another miscarriage, you'll be a different person by the end of that, just by doing those small things every single day. And I like to say this thing where if you think of a goal that's so small, it seems ridiculously laughable that you won't be able to achieve it. Like for me, that's adding 1 extra vegetable into any meal of my day. I find that I actually laugh when I think, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to achieve that. Seriously, for me, that's really funny. And that's the kind of goal we want. We want something that makes you laugh because you think there is no day on which I cannot achieve that. So that's my third really actionable one there.
Yes. And going back to the vitamin D, so our vitamin D levels can also affect our thyroid health, and our thyroid can play a large role in miscarriage risk. So I just want to throw this in there. If you did have a miscarriage, I would highly recommend getting a full thyroid panel, not just TSH, a full thyroid panel. And then also potentially considering having your partner get a semen analysis, because the sperm plays a very large role in the beginning phases, in the creation of the placenta, in a lot of those things. So we want to make sure that both mom and dad are in a healthy state. I feel like we put so much pressure on mom checking all the boxes, making all of these changes, but really you should be inviting your partner to doing these changes with you, and maybe not even just inviting, right? I think we need to have a conversation about the importance of doing this together, because ideally, you're not going to raise the child by yourself. You're going to raise the child together. This is a team effort. And yeah, I wanted to throw that out there because I have definitely had women in my community, past clients, where the partner was like, no, I'm not doing that. But I do think it's almost, oh, how do I want to word this? Like your first experience of how it could look like parenting. And I think that it's a very important hurdle to move through together. And I think that it could potentially be telling in how parenting will go for both of you. Can you get on the same page or not? Yeah, just wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, thanks for those tips. I think that those are really, really great tips. The 80/20, of course, and just realizing that the little shifts is going to build and you're going to come out a different person on the other side.
Yeah, and actually what you were saying about sperm quality, food, what your partner eats actually affects their sperm quality as well. So definitely get them on board, because they should be doing, like you said, it's a partnership. It's the first look at parenting. If they're eating the same things as you, if they're, nourishing their body and they're doing these same things, they're also increasing the likelihood of getting pregnant again. So yeah, 100% get your partner on board on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one more question for you that just came to mind. So I'm thinking it will help some of the listeners, not necessarily nutritionally related, but I have heard from many women, whether they experienced one or more miscarriages, that when they do get pregnant again, there's a lot of fear that comes up. Did you experience anything like that? And how did you move through it? Right? Because like you said, it's a traumatic event and our bodies can sometimes go in like a fight or flight or a freeze response. Of course, you're excited you're pregnant, but then there's also, I'm sure, creeping thoughts of, what if I lose this baby too?
Yeah, there definitely is. I think for me personally, and for a lot of people I speak to who have experienced one or multiple miscarriages, it's almost like a fight between fear and faith. So for me, getting through my miscarriage, there was this one overwhelming thought that kind of was my silver lining. And it was that I was in a bit of awe that my body had recognized this pregnancy was a chromosomal abnormality. It was not viable, and it took action. It did something about it. And it's not a pleasant experience, but for me, something that counteracted that fear was recognizing that if my body was capable of doing that the first time, and my pregnancy progressed to the 12-week mark, and yes, again, there was still fear because I knew you can have up to 20 weeks, a miscarriage can still happen. After 20 weeks, a stillbirth can happen. There's so many fear factors there. Like pregnancy is a really fearful time as much as it's beautiful. However, there was a big part of it that was I had faith that my body had made it to 12 weeks. And it had said that it had basically said to the world, this pregnancy is viable. And so I had a lot of faith that going forward, my body was going to protect this pregnancy as much as possible and protect this fetus and protect the baby as it came through. And so that was the thing that I guess I found really I had to balance. However, when you're looking at fear in pregnancy, especially after a miscarriage, something that you can do is just work on the stress. The stress levels in pregnancy can be really high. For me, that meant going, in Australia, we have the private channel. I think in a lot of countries, if you go private, you get your own OB, you get like a dedicated doctor who looks after you. And so that was something that really helped me, because if I did have concerns and questions, then at least I had someone to talk to. The other thing is you can look at support groups, and a really great mindset trick, the little trick, is visualization. So something that really helped with the fear is visualizing not only the baby growing inside you, but what it would be like to birth the baby, what it would be like to hold the baby in your arms, what it would be like to have a healthy baby at the end of this pregnancy. And I know it sounds like that's not going to have an effect, but really your body responds really strongly to the images you put in your brain. So if you're coming from a place of fear and you think, oh my gosh, what if I lose this pregnancy? There is part of your body and your brain that's going to internalize that, and it'll increase the stress factor. It'll try and hold on to this pregnancy. But if you're giving your brain images of, I know that at the end of this, I'm going to have a healthy baby, I'm going to give birth, it's going to be a really calming experience, all of those things. And you really walk yourself through that. And I'm talking like at night, you lie down and you really just walk through that entire process from beginning to end. Then your body's going to absorb that, and a lot of the fear goes away because you're taking away that, I guess, unknown area. You're giving your brain something to hold on to that's positive and light and has a lot of energy in it behind it.
I'm so happy that I asked that question. That was gold. Thank you so much for sharing. I know that that is going to be so helpful for someone. And yeah, fear or faith, I totally agree with you. And for me, I feel like there was one point in my pregnancy because I had a subchorionic hemorrhage. I had a few different things in the beginning that I had to just really hold on to that faith. And I had this like aha moment where I'm going to be experiencing a certain level of fear or worry for the rest of my life now, right? That is parenthood, whether it's pregnancy, and then there's, oh, then you need to get through the birth, and then they're so small and you need to keep them alive, and then they're toddlers and they're running around, and then they're 16, 18, and they can drive cars, right? There's always going to be something as a parent that you could either let fear take the driver's seat, or you could let faith or a more positive mindset shift. So I think that it's really important to be able to guide our thoughts in our mind into a more positive light. Otherwise, you're going to be very frazzled and your nervous system is going to be really dysregulated because I feel like parenthood in a nutshell is really worry is a big part of it, right? I'm sure with your little one, 18 months old, they're getting into all the things. Are they going to put their finger in a socket? You know, like there's just so many different things. So being able to ground yourself and just, hold faith that you are doing the best that you can and just taking that with you every day. But thank you so much for sharing all of that. I know that you have a freebie for the listeners, 5 ways to turbocharge any habit change. If you could tell us about that.
Yep. So I have distilled all my knowledge about habit change, which I am extremely fascinated with. I love looking at how to make habit change stick, how all these little tips and tricks to make it really turbocharged. And I have put them in this freebie, which is basically 5 really actionable habit changes that you can make. And it can be applied to any habit change. Like it's not just nutritional. I did obviously make it a little bit more nutritional because I'm a health coach. However, I truly believe you could apply these for any area of life. They are very consistent over any area. And if you put them in practice, the shift that you'll see, it will happen so fast. You will be like, whoa, I did not even realize I was a different person back then. Yeah.
Beautiful. So yeah, no matter where you are on your journey, go in the show notes, download that. That will be helpful. And let us know where people can find you, connect with you, and learn more.
So I am pretty much everywhere. I've got Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And I love getting questions. I love talking about nutrition. I love talking about people's stories and delving really deep. So feel free to contact me on any of those. I also have a website where you'll find little fun games and quizzes, but also really actionable tips. I'm really all about being actionable. I know how frustrating it can be just to have information, but not have something to actually do at the end of that. And I back everything with scientific research because as a pharmacist, I just really believe I'm only going to recommend things that I've either tried or if I know that there's scientific research behind there. So there's a lot of information on there as well.
So all those links will be in the show notes. So thank you so much for your wisdom and sharing your story with us, Sandhya. It's been a great episode.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.